Good afternoon. You're watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We kick off our broadcast with the detection of the first two Omicron variant cases in the Philippines. One of them is a returning overseas Filipino from Japan who arrived in the country on December 1st via Philippine Airlines. He manifested symptoms of COVID 19, just like coughs and colds, and eventually tested positive for the virus on December 7 after undergoing the swab test on December 5. The other patient is a Nigerian national who arrived in the country on November 30 via an Oman Air flight. He also tested positive for COVID 19 on December 7. Only one of the patients is fully vaccinated. The DOH says both are now asymptomatic and are currently in quarantine. Contact tracing is also ongoing. Shortly before the announcement on the Omicron variant cases, the IATF announced that the entire country is placed under alert level 2. That's until December 31st. All right, local shares nosedive after the country announced again the detection of the first two Omicron cases here in the Philippines. The benchmark was on cruise mode for the most part of the morning session, but took a deep plunge the moment that development was announced. The index capped off hump day at 7,132, down by 1.5%. It's after declining by as much as 1.9%. This marks the first loss in three sessions in the main gauge, with only six blue chips ending the day in the positive territory here. You'd see here JG Summit at least is a day's best performer, down 1.3%, with a number of muted gains here from other stocks, the likes of GT Capital and Security Bank. On the flip side, however, you have LT Group, the day's worst performer, down 4.9%. Other stocks here decreasing by more than 4% are Alliance Global and Mega Road, as well as Metro Bank, which ended the day down 3.9%. We see there are some specific stocks you have to be keeping an eye on. For one, there's Converge. That's after its CEO Dennis Anthony Uy says that the broadband operator is discussing a potential bond sale with banks. The timeline for that is going to be for the first quarter of 2022. They will first test investor reception to the company's debt in the local market. Uy says that even though their cash flow remains strong, their capex is quite big. In fact, they have at least earmarked $200 million for cable expansion in 2022. Converge joins the sell-off in the main index here, down by as much as 3.3% to 30 pesos and 75 centavos a piece. Also, let's take a look at ICTSI. I mean, speaking of expansion, the port operator, at least its unit, has penciled a 230 million budget for expansion plans next year. I'm talking about Conticon Manzanillo, which operates a Mexico port. They are investing that amount to grow facilities and work on infrastructure. This as maritime traffic improves globally. This will expand their operating capacity to 1.7 million TEUs from 1.4 million, which is their annual average. Now, ICTSI, as you can see right here, still unable to find the right footing here in the red, down by as much as close to 8%, really, at 193 pesos and 60 centavos a piece. Lastly, some updates on trading hours here for the holidays for December 24 and December 31. Pre-open is going to be at 9 in the morning, but close at 12:10. So it's going to be a half trading day for both Christmas and New Year's Eve. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Cash remittances from OFWs recorded a slower pace of growth in October. That's amid the onslaught of the Delta variant. The central bank reports money sent home by Filipinos inched up by 2.4% year on year. In October, that's to $2.8 billion. This is lower than the 5.2% growth recorded in September. In the 10 months to October, cash remittances expanded 5.3%. For the entire year, the BSP projects a growth of 6%. The Bicameral Conference Committee has approved the proposed 5 trillion peso national budget for 2022. A big chunk of the spending plan has been allotted for pandemic response, including special risk allowances for healthcare workers and the purchase of booster shots. Senate Finance Committee Chairman Sunny Angara says the health department received some additional budget of up to 30 billion pesos. The transportation department, meanwhile, saw the most budget cuts as lawmakers found that the agency has the biggest amount of unutilized funds. The budget will be transmitted to Malacanang for President Duterte's signature once it has once it is ratified by the House and the Senate. Now, the government's economic team has raised its growth target for 2021. That's on the back of increased mobility and continued easing of restrictions. The Interagency Development Budget Coordination Committee now expects a full year GDP growth of 5 to 5.5%. That's higher than its downgraded goal of 4 to 5%, which it gave back in August. The economic team says growth is seen to further accelerate in the fourth quarter, citing the uptick in business activity. The DBCC also hopes that the country's GDP will return to pre pandemic levels by 2022. The Asian Development Bank has also raised its growth outlook for the Philippines to 5.1% from a previous projection of 4.5%. These upgraded forecasts were given yesterday, a day before the DOH announced the detection of two Omicron variant cases in the country. Picking up from that, how much of a risk to recovery is the country's detection of the first two Omicron cases? Time to pick the brains of Mike Ricafort, the head of economic research over at RCBC. Good afternoon, Sir Mike. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, Jess, and to your viewers.
All right, first, should we be worried over the entry of the Omicron variant here in the Philippines? Is this going to be a threat to recovery?
Well, Jess, at least for the past couple of days, the markets have been anticipating this for more than 2 weeks already since November 25. It's also acknowledged that it's just a question of when. At least for today, we already saw the first confirmed cases of the Omicron variant here in the country. So it doesn't really come as a surprise anymore, considering the fact that it's already present in many countries around the world already, and the fact that at least based on the initial findings, most of the cases have been relatively mild, and so far, there has only been one confirmed fatality or death in the UK, as announced yesterday. So, that's a general view uh, that it's more transmissible than the Delta variant. However, it's also at the same time less deadly. Well, at least based on the initial findings that that's it. Well, for the Delta variant, it could spread to 6 to 8 persons, but for the
Mm-hmm.
Omicron, it's to around well, a bit higher at 10 persons. So, at least we're still the whole world is still awaiting for further details. At least that's based on the initial finding. It's still at least it's relatively milder, and at the same time, we have yet to see also further findings on the efficacy of vaccines and the COVID pills. But so far, we have already gotten initial there have been initial research findings that at least the booster shots would still be effective in preventing the Omicron
Mm-hmm.
variant. At least preventing severe cases or preventing death in a significant manner. But
Mm-hmm.
apart from the point of view of the economy, though, at least considering that the Delta variant has been more deadly, the country has already defeated it for now. Cases have been down to just 200 to 300 levels per day lately. So that's already the lowest since May of last year, and that's already at least good signaling to start with. No? But of course, it's as a matter of prudence, it's still better to be careful to have this. At least there have been restrictions put in place, the flight restrictions, the travel restrictions, the internet, or at least from the well, as far as international travel is concerned, at least to prevent this from spreading further and
Mhm.
to nip the problem at the bud. So, but we have to acknowledge the fact that it could still slow down the economic recovery prospects. Well, it could have been, well, had it not been for Omicron, foreign tourism would have been open already for fully vaccinated international travelers, say for the past 1 to 2 weeks already.
Mhm.
And well, that's the missing piece of the puzzle of the recovery story, foreign tourism. That's the only thing that's lacking. Because since November 5, practically the economy is already open. Even
Mhm.
the hardest hit ones, the most restricted ones, for the most part, since the pandemic last year, they're
Mhm.
already open. Uh, and yeah, well, but let's see. At least
Would
this is just
would you
part.
say then, Sir Mike, that the economy is better positioned once cases surge due to the Omicron variant, or are we better positioned to absorb a possible Omicron-driven surge?
Well, definitely, maybe the most important indicator, Jess, is the vaccination.
Mhm.
Well, like right now, where the country is already nearing population protection, and maybe give it maybe 2 to 3 months, early next year, we would already reach. We're headed towards herd immunity already. So that's one important big step, and it has, well, that has been proven to have well, really defeated the Delta variant, no? In a
Mhm.
very significant way, considering that the country came from a record daily high of 26,300 cases on September 11 of this year. Now it's just down to 200 to 300 levels per day. So that's very good signaling, at least in terms of the country's capability to handle these kinds of problem. Of course, there may be some uh, well, some nuances now that it's more transmissible.
Mhm.
However, the mere fact that yeah, its ability to spread, it's much faster than the Delta variant, and however, well, the mere fact that it's less deadly, at least preventing severe cases or even deaths. Well, really, the increased vaccination would still be the one of the best defenses of the country and the population per se. No, that's why it's really very important. Well, right, especially now that that the well that the vaccinations are already being accelerated, and more importantly, the booster shots,
Mhm.
based on the initial laboratory and research findings, that the booster shots would be also effective in thwarting or preventing this Omicron variant from spreading further, and the fact that it's already being started already for the adult population, provided that uh, from the time of the second shot, it's at least 6 months
Mhm.
for most of the vaccine. So, yeah, that's why, well, from one point of view of the economy, well, maybe just well, it's just a matter of prudence. Just let the dust settle, and eventually size up this further, understand it better with more details to come, maybe for the next 1 to 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and eventually well, well, at least we're all steps in the right direction. The country's alert level is at 2 nationwide, and well, had it not been for Omicron, we could have been already be at alert level 1 already in time for Christmas. But this may have to come maybe
Yeah.
early next year, if this Omicron variant is better
Mhm.
controlled or managed eventually
But
with all the
outside the
measures.
Philippines, there has been already a surge of Omicron cases, especially in Europe and even in the US. So, how do you think is this going to hamper at least the recovery of the tourism sector?
Well, just true, because well, even in parts of in those two countries, in the U.S. and in Europe, well, they still have they're still uh, grappling with Delta variant cases, no? So especially in some parts of the U.S. And now Omicron is slowly emerging. Uh, well, slowly emerging, at least 3% of the total of cases so far. And it's also, well, at least well, its share is already rising UK. So definitely, uh, in view of the travel restrictions, the flight restrictions, and some and other curbs on international mobility, on international travel and movement, so that would slow down the recovery, the pace of the recovery, and that could also show in terms of the demand for commodities, the
Mhm.
demand for. That's why that's one of the reasons why oil prices still went down for the past 2 to 3 weeks. It's still down by about $14 from the peak, but last week it was down as much as more than a week ago. It was down more than $20 from the peak. So those were one of the unintended consequences of this Omicron variant.
Mhm.
At least in easing some of the inflationary pressures brought about by elevated oil and energy prices, as the world is, at least the northern hemisphere is still entering into the winter season, and hopefully with the increased vaccination towards herd immunity, that's gonna be well that's gonna prevent uh, of at least further spreading of these variants, especially the Omicron, and at the same time, hopefully after winter, we'll see if there would be already some normalization,
Mhm.
some improvement, in terms of easing of the disruptions on the global supply chain, and
Mhm.
yeah, those things would. Well, of course, the Omicron variant could add to that, no? Could complicate the disruptions in the global supply chain in terms of the restrictions. So
Mhm.
it would definitely be a drag. It could slow things down a bit, but hopefully, uh, we'll see. Well, we have seen already increased vaccinations in some of the developed countries in response to this, to the Omicron variant threat, and even the booster shots. No, so it would be largely a function of those interventions that would
Mhm.
hopefully nip this problem at the bud, and hopefully also the vaccine makers would make the necessary tweaks. Even there are already COVID pills, by the way, at least from Merck and from Pfizer, at
Right.
least to address especially the unvaccinated, and also some of the breakthrough cases for the vaccinated people. So at least there are already um, other countermeasures, more
Mhm.
countermeasures now. The world is better prepared now to handle this, and but of course, prudence would always be key to
Exactly. Of
yeah,
course,
to
the hope is that lessons have been learned after that Delta-driven surge. But this time around, before we let you go, Sir Mike, again, the DBCC being more optimistic about the country's growth prospects, lifting at least or increasing their projections for the year, and even expecting a return to pre-pandemic growth by next year. How likely are we to hit these targets?
well, it's very likely. For instance, we already revised our GDP target this year to 5.3 to 5.5%. So that's already higher by from our previous estimate of 5 to 5.5%. And for the fourth quarter, there's a chance of growth of at least 6%, maybe at least 6.2% year on year. So that would bring the full year average to 5.3% at least. Of course, there would be surprises on the upside because of
Mhm.
we're practically reopening towards normalcy already. It's just the missing part of the equation towards the greater normalcy is foreign tourism. So we have yet to wait for that. And however, in view of the the upgraded forecast for the fourth quarter and for the full year this year for 2021, for next year, we're estimating GDP growth of 6 to 6.5%. Because
Mhm.
now the recovery has been kind of front loaded already. Because this has been a pleasant surprise. The significant reduction in new COVID cases at the very least. That's a very important indication, and at the same time, the increased vaccination to really help sustain that.
Mhm.
And we have the election year. We have the timely approval of the national budget that's going to help pump prime the economy with increased infrastructure spending, and the other pillars of the recovery. We still have a relatively accommodative monetary policy, and of course, all systems go. The bright spots, remittances are still near among record highs. Even exports, imports, and manufacturing gauges are practically back to pre-pandemic levels. So those indicators would all support those
Yeah.
improved economic estimates for this year and even for next year.
Okay, that of course is the hope that all these indicators will at least sustain the levels they are in currently. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Mike Fort, head of economic research over at RCBC. Thank you, sir, Mike, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Jess, and to your viewers, and always stay safe.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, December 15, 2021. Catch Business World Live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and we are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.